Do you have any sense of how frequent we have violent tantrums being thrown when devices are taken away?
I would say if devices taken away from any level of child that's had access to it without the boundaries put on, I would say it's very common. I would say probably 80% of my families that come in have experienced that.
And what does this look like? Give me some of the horror stories.
Doors being kicked in by children where parents have locked themselves into their bedroom. Kids who have threatened, gotten knives out of kitchens, saying that they're going to kill their parents. Children telling their parents that they were going to go kill themselves and it was going to be on their hands. It gets very, very dark very quickly because you're taking away something that to them is almost like an appendage to their life.
It's their whole world.
It's their whole world.
Are there strategies to mitigate that heading in? If you feel like there's a chance that this might be the response, what do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I've created so many different things, but like I do like this digital detox kind of program where I'm like, you can't just go from everything to nothing. Think of the nonstick pans. We all used them and then all of a sudden they were like toxic or, we're not supposed to use them. Apparently.
I'm still using them.
Right? Well,
I might get the cancer.
Right.
What are you going to do?
Right? We get the knowledge.
I like eggs with less oil.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
There you go. Yeah. But ceramic's fine. But when you learn something and now you've been educated on it, it's like, how do we bring someone with us? We talk about it and we sit down and we're like, hey, let's look at these things. And I think a lot of it's going to come from our parents just taking the time to sit down and say, hey, like, let's look at how this looks like for everybody else in society. We're no different. We're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Here's my screen time. I'm doing too much. Why don't we try to do this? Like, let's create a goal at the end, right? Like, if we can manage to do this at the end of that, let's say we use our screen time less than 2 hours a day, our kind of junk screen time, right? The gaming and the social and all of that stuff. Let's do less than 2 hours a day. That's what science actually shows. Like, we're not going to damage. Yeah, we're not going to have structural or neurochemical like impact. If we can reduce it to that, then hey, how about at the end of the month we take a trip, do something fun that you want to do. Bound it with like some sort of tether. We want a reward for that for them. And how do we attach what we need as people into that, right? We need to have connection. We need to have people around us. And maybe it's, hey, I'll take you and your friend to the water park or to whatever. Something not on screens.
Yeah. We'll go to Dave & Buster's.
Yeah.
Is that still a thing? Does that exist?
It is. I think it is. Yeah. Nightmare in a box.
Digital detox. Is there a digital methadone? Is there a thing, take this away, but give you this other slightly addictive thing that's not as bad for you?
Well, kind of. To me, it's time and like replacing it with things that are of equal value to them, which is hard if they've used it too long, right? I mean, there are things that you can do. There's a great Reset Summer Camp, does like a whole program. He's a great guy and he basically goes to a campus and he does a whole digital detox like with the kids and they have like no access, but it's super expensive. Yeah, it's super expensive. And it's almost like a kind of a rehab for kids. What is happening is, and this is no joke, rehab centers are actually creating pathways to bring in people in order to be in that same kind of 12-step program with these addicts, which I think is a total nightmare. Like, you do not want your kid to do that, in my opinion, because now we're taking a tech addict and we're introducing them to maybe a fentanyl addict. Like, probably not a great idea. It's already hard enough as parents. I wouldn't do that path. I think that the interim of the methadone piece, right, is if I'm using my phone this many hours, let's just try to do it a third of that. And let's just see if we can do that for a week, right? Can we put some time restrictions on it? I've got my 20-year-olds, right? They'll put in, I'm like, how much are you using your Instagram, right? And my patients, and they're like, 6 hours a day. I'm like, let's try to like pull that back, right? And so they learn that they can put like a reminder on and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. And then all of a sudden it doesn't seem as onerous to them and they start to make choices and they're like, you know what, I'm just not grabbing it all the time. Like, I'm thoughtful. Like, I want to check it in the morning. I want to check it this time. It's almost giving them power back. And you just can't go from everything to nothing, particularly with an adolescent mindset or a young child. You have to kind of piece it back and be kind of tricky. It's like putting the vegetables in the food when they don't know it's there.
Yeah, it's put a little cheese on it.
Right. Blend the cauliflower into the potatoes. Yeah.
Was there a moment for you where this came into sharp focus, where it became clear that kids' experience and interactions with technology was playing such a devastating role in their lives?
It starts way before. I was in the graduate school program, JD, PhD. I was at the FBI. I happened to be assigned in Quantico in the profiling unit. And so I was working in CASCU, Child Abduction Serial Killer Unit. I was doing homicidal. It was terrifying. I was looking at these white vans picking up kids, right? That's what we all thought was the danger zone. At the time, Louis Freeh was the director, and he was like, hey, we could use your help. Women are getting abducted. Would you be a visiting scholar? And so I came on with National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. And so I was there doing my research, and like I got into this unit, and Columbine happened. And when Columbine happened, which was the first national like great tragedy, I think that we all kind of paid attention to, that's when I saw Harris and Klebold and what they had posted online. And then 20 years later, if I look at that was the genesis for me, because I sat there in the room with these agents, listening to these profilers, and I thought, oh my God, nobody is paying attention to how technology is influencing psychology and how psychology will be influenced back. And that's where it started for me.
What was it about that event that had a technology component?
Where we are developing as people and as children specifically, we need to find purpose. We need to find our value. Who am I? Am I going to be loved? These are all just very, very developmental phases that we have to go through. And so these kids are looking at that. And even today, we have what we call Columbiners. And it is an ability to come in and jump in and be a part of something. So that's the part that I saw. Looking at headquarters down in DC, 100 agents pretending to be young kids online and trying to pick them up, and I just thought,
so catfishing.
Yeah. In the beginning, like, and it was,
wow.
Yeah, it was right in the beginning.
This is all horrible.
I know.
You were basically working in hell, is what you're saying.
Oh, I had night terrors. My husband was like, thank God we don't have weapons in the home. Like, from a soulful place, it was very tragic. That's what has empowered me to like help others. I think that there's ways to step out of it.
To come back to the technology part, I'm going to be a little more skeptical in a lot of ways than probably I would otherwise be, because I'm such a tech lover. So I'm like, no, it's not the tech, it's the people. What were those two broken young men doing online that you think played this causal role?
I think we both can be right. I think we can't, like, I don't think that we have to say that it is 100% tech, because it is also people. And it's fundamentally is, do I belong? And so when you look at these two gentlemen, they were isolated. They were ostracized. They were not accepted by their peer group. There's a lot of work now. We look at incels, involuntary celibate groups. Young men follow same principle of they just need to feel needed. If I wind back and say, all right, on a campus, if we had 1,500 kids at a high school, let's say. Yeah. And there's
problem number one.
Yeah. So and there's a cohort, right? Like of maybe the jocks and then the nerds and the whoever, right? But you had a place and you belonged to a place. So if you fast forward to today and you look at our kids today, they're competing against 5 billion people online every day. How do you find a place and how do you matter? So that's what I saw back then in the very beginning, that was like, these kids just want to matter and they're trying to find a voice.
You bristle at using the term technology addiction. So I actually want to take a little time and get your definitions of things, because I think we throw words like addiction around a lot. So I guess first is like, how do you define technology?
So all tech is not developed equal, as you know. So I look at technology and I say, all right, is technology kind of like a food pyramid? So at the base of it, do we have educational media? Do we have literary media? Do we have all of those things? The top of the pyramid, the donuts and the ice cream and all the stuff that we really, really love. Like, we just need to limit that kind of media. There is a lot of good that tech can bring. I can take a class of kids or a group of kids and I can take them to Machu Picchu and we can walk through some of the most beautiful places on earth with a headset and never get on a plane. So there's a lot of really good purpose that we can find in tech. So, you know, I'm not going to vilify it all, but I think
you're not a full Luddite.
I'm not. No.
And then how do you think about addiction? And we talked about this with Dr. Drew, who introduced us. Give me a functional definition of addiction.
So addiction is a dependency or something that we need in order to move forward, right? And there's substance addictions and there's process addictions. So the substance addictions are pretty easy. We're putting something into our body. A process addiction is actually something that we're participating in. So gambling, technology, all of those things, that's a process. It's the same dopamine reward pathway in your brain that gets highlighted and gets excitatory, but it's different than the substance addictions. And our friend Drew and I have talked for years about, is the kids getting wired in at this early age of technology, that dopamine push, is that priming them and getting them ready for more substance-based addictions, which is what we're trying to find out now. Is there a higher level of addiction? So that's how I look at it and how I explain it. I just personally hate labeling kids. I am an anti-label psychologist in my practice, and because I think people aren't to be trusted, they'll live up to that label if you give it to them.
There is this really weird feedback loop with labels. I hate them too. Is that something that psychologists just love to do? Like, why does that happen so much?
I think you have to look at the money. We have the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. That's our Bible in psychiatry. DSM-5 now, right? And you look at it and it's ridiculous. If you look 2 versions back, homosexuality is a disease process. Really?
Right.
Like, are we getting it right every time? Why are we doing that, right? So I look at it as a guide for insurance, because insurance works off the DSM, insurance pays off the DSM. And so it's this framework to help us understand as professionals, like this group of something could be an issue, like spectrum disorder, which used to be autism, right? We're not going to call it that. We're going to call it spectrum disorder because this is a myriad of different issues that we could have. We don't have to like label it in these different categories. So I think it's a guideline, but personally, I'm probably not the typical psychologist, but the only reason why you would have to do that is because you're going to get it for insurance-based reasons in order to get reimbursed and get paid. And so that's what irritates me, because I just think that we cannot abandon that generation and say, here's your label, you need to learn how to live in it.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.